Rook Hawkins, co-founder of Rational Response Squad.
Check us out at rationalresponders.com, and for this segment, you might want to visit our Jesus is a Myth section of our message board. It's called, what is it called?
Jesus Mythicist Campaign.
All right, Jesus Mythicist Campaign, and that's under the Rook Hawkins setting at rationalresponders.com, and visit our forums there. Click forums at the top. We have quite a good discussion board, and we'd love to have you there, especially if you don't agree with us.
Yeah.
So, Rook wants to talk today for a few minutes. We'll keep it short. Rook could do this for 3 hours.
Longer than that.
Yeah. In fact, we have a bunch of shows in our archive about why Jesus is a myth. For those who don't know, what we do here at the Rational Response Squad is we each have an area of expertise, something that we are highly specialized and honed in, and Rook's is ancient history and biblical knowledge. So I'm going to ask a couple questions of Rook, let him bounce some information off us, and hopefully you'll learn something and maybe explore this topic a little bit further. So with that said, Rook, what is a mythicist?
A mythicist, Brian, is somebody who does not believe that Jesus was actually a historical person. Rather, they believe that the beginnings of Christianity started as a mystical cult, which was very common in the day, and probably revolved around a spiritual plane and not a historical plane.
And that was a little bit about how Paul felt, correct?
Right, right. He had his experience through a vision. He never actually physically met Jesus or even physically talks about Jesus in a historical sense. It's always a spiritual sense.
Okay, so what about all the historical mentions that Christians are always telling us? You know, Jesus has been mentioned, you know, in Josephus and Suetonius and, you know, Pliny the Younger. What do we make of this?
Well, Josephus is obviously a forgery. I mean, even the top Josephus scholar even admits the fact that there's probably no mention of Christ before the time of Eusebius. You know, aside from that, of course, there's Suetonius. You mentioned Suetonius, and Suetonius, you know, he talks about Christians, but Christus, or Christians following a guy named Christus, who was a basically named for a free person, and also followers of Christians, or Christus was also a few other things, but
it's a lot of crests.
Yeah, a lot of crests. You know,
yeah.
Christus is not Christus. And even if it were the same, no one's discounting that followers of Christ existed. You know, even Paul was a follower of Christ. Doesn't necessarily mean that Christ was a historical person.
Now, how just give me an idea. I mean, how can we figure out that Josephus was most likely a forgery?
In fact, there's no mention of the testimonian before the 4th century under Eusebius. He's the first person to mention it.
Before the 4th century, you're saying?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, wow. All right.
Josephus wrote 95 CE, so...
Okay. And so there are no contemporary accounts of Jesus?
That's affirmative, no contemporary accounts. Not even enemy attestation. And you would think that there would be.
Now, for those who are watching and you're wondering contemporary accounts, we're speaking about reference to Jesus Christ while he was actually alive.
Right, people who knew of him even, like within the next 10 years, generally is considered a contemporaneous accounts.
Does it make any sense that Jesus would have performed some of the amazing miracles that he would have performed and nobody would have written about him during the time when
definitely
he was alive?
not at all. In the Gospels, in fact, there's talk of an earthquake and, you know, all these dead rising from the grave at his resurrection, or his death and resurrection. And, of course, the people who would have documented this, Pliny the Elder, for example, you know, don't even mention these events, and in fact, there's no mention of them at all. So
now, seemingly in a bout of ignorance, it seems that Christians will often try to tell us that somebody like Julius Caesar has less evidence for him than Jesus Christ. I mean, what do you say to people like that?
Well, that's just false. I mean, we have Julius Caesar's own writings. I mean, the Gallic War, the Civil Wars have been a Latin classic for you know, who knows how many years now, for 2,000 years. You know, not only that, but there's coinage we have directly relating to Julius Caesar's victories and also Julius Caesar himself. We have enemy attestation, I was talking about earlier, which, you know, Cicero talks about how much he hated Julius Caesar.
I don't know how you keep all those names straight, man.
Sometimes I get confused. So Cicero talks about how much he hates Caesar and how much he wished he had been a part of the conspiracy to kill him. I mean, there's all these various other things that you can look at too. I mean, the archaeological evidence alone is enough to put Julius Caesar above
I think a coin with Caesar on it is enough from the time while he was actually alive. Is what you're
Right.
saying.
Well, not only that, but it's about his victories. Documenting his victories and such like that. Also contemporaneous. So.
But I mean, for me, that would be enough for me. Oh, well, yeah, there's a coin from the time he was alive. So there's clearly more evidence for Caesar in that case if we talk about contemporary historical accounts.
Right.
So, then they'll say, well, okay, we know about Jesus from the Gospels, so why don't the Gospels count?
Well, the Gospels weren't really written until around the fall of Jerusalem, around 70 CE. So, I mean, there's
this is like 35, 40 years after Jesus died.
Right.
What do biblical historians say about that dating?
Most biblical historians are in agreement. I mean, Bart Ehrman, for example, is a huge supporter of this. Metzger is a huge supporter of this. Carrier, Price, Lauder. I don't think there's... even contemporary... even eyewitnesses to some of the early martyrs of the faith admit to the fact that these were not eyewitness accounts. The only person who ever make a connection there is Papias, Papias rather, and Papias was refuted later on by Eusebius, as a matter of fact, as being a freaking idiot. So his testimony doesn't count.
So, a lot of times we'll hear them say that the Bible or the Gospels are actually dated a little bit earlier than that time frame. Is there evidence to show that they couldn't have been?
Right. There's evidence, actually internal evidence, talks about the fall of Jerusalem.
You're talking about in the Gospels.
That's correct.
Talks about the fall of Jerusalem, and the fall of Jerusalem happened in 70?
70, right.
So you can't write something in 65 about what happened in 70.
Right, exactly.
What Gospel is that they talk about the fall of Jerusalem?
Well, all of them. Really.
Okay, okay.
Mark talks about it, but Luke Acts is even dated now. There's new scholarship out by Tyson.
So we can know for sure that the Gospels didn't come until at least 70.
Right.
And now some people date them even much later than that.
Well, that's
right?
what I was getting to right now. A professor at the South Carolina University, his name's Tyson. His last name's Tyson. Professor Tyson. He wrote a new book called Marcion and Luke Acts, and it talks about a late date for both Luke and Acts, mid-2nd century. So it's
wow.
That's big. It's big news. I got done reading the book. I think it's an excellent book. I told Carrier about it. Carrier's gonna look at it too. It's probably one of the most coolest things, and this has been proposed earlier too as well. 18th, 19th century, they proposed a date for this as well. So
now you're writing a book right now that is about the Gnostics and how Jesus wouldn't have really even needed to be in existence for Christianity to have started, correct?
Right, and it also proves that his followers did believe actually in a Christ, just not the Christ that the Orthodox or the Sarcastic idea is, which is a historical Jesus Christ, more or less a spiritual being that enlightens people through knowledge, and he did die on a cross and was crucified and resurrected, but it just didn't happen on earth. If it happened in a very spiritual sort of way. And in fact, Paul talks about, for example, putting on Christ. It's very metaphorical. Everything in Paul is very metaphorical, and it speaks volumes as to what else is going on. And I would also recommend another book for people who want to check this out. Richard Carrier wrote a few chapters in something called The Empty Tomb. I want to suggest that book. It's actually edited by Price and Lauder. It's a very good book. The Spiritual Body of Christ is an excellent chapter in that book written by Carrier. I would suggest that book to anyone who wants to check this out.
Yeah, don't rush yourself, but do you have any idea when you'll be able to complete this book?
Well, as soon as I get everything I need resource-wise, it should be done within a year.
Okay, and for those who don't know, Rook has a small link on the top left-hand side of our website. If you want to help Rook get his reference material, he needs a lot of reference material to be able to put this book together, so that he can source many different sources and show that there was a lot of research put into this. He's got a lot of it done, and he's on the right path, and he needs to make sure that all of his facts are straight. And so we've got an extensive list. It says Rook's wish list or something along those lines at the top left-hand side of rationalresponders.com. And we could really use your help if you want to see this project come to fruition. We'd be very grateful. And tune into our show every Friday night, 9 p.m., freethoughtmedia.com, and you can actually listen in our Stickcam webcam room at stickcam.com/profile/sapient, or check it out from rationalresponders.com. Just click webcam room, and we're in there almost all the time.
Also, you can email me too at rookhawkins@aol.com.
And your new blog.
That's right. It's rookthehistorian.blogspot.com.
So thanks so much for listening to this short little show. This is but a teeny little bit of reason why you should not believe that Jesus Christ existed as a historical figure. And guess what? If Jesus Christ didn't exist as a historical figure, Christianity is no more. So what does that tell you?
Oh, it is. It's just a fluke.
Right. Well, right. Exactly. Yeah, that's my point. Hey, until next time, folks.
Stay rational.
Stay rational.